Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Afternoon Tune. I'm your host, Nick, and with me is my co-host.
It's your boy, Chayse.
And we have a very special guest with us today. We have Mr. Michael Horrigan. He's a very close friend of mine. We have had a lot of great discussions about films in general. And how are you doing today, Mr. Michael?
Welcome to the show.
Well, I'm doing okay. I had to give an hour-long lecture earlier, so we'll see how my voice holds up. I can't make any promises.
All right, so we have a packed show for you today. We are talking about the myth, the legend. We are talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League.
and hopefully we won't be talking as long as the movie is.
Yeah, we'll try to scale it back. We'll try to scale it back, but yeah, go ahead and give us $70 million so you can give us Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Ultimate Edition review. Go ahead and give us $70 million and we'll go ahead and make a 4-hour review for that. Also on the docket, we have Marvel Studios coming in hot with the debut episode of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yep.
Just catching up with
Just
everybody.
Just a lot of good superhero content all around, you know?
Yeah, it was a great to be a superhero fan.
As I say, as a comic book guy, this has been a very good couple of days.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yep, even my dog's happy about it. It's like, yay! It's like, Jesus pose. Yeah.
For the Snyder Cut.
Yep, Jesus. Oh. Ancient lamentation music starts.
And around these parts, we root for both DC and Marvel, because when they're both winning, we're winning, you know?
Yes. When they win, we win. I got the Superman shirt on right now. I got my hair combed like Cavill's Superman. I was
gonna say, like, I know for me, like, I'll come in and say, as a comic fan, yeah, I generally agree with that, right? Like, I read Marvel books, I read DC books, right? Good books and good stories and good writers and good characters do not know a brand. And honestly, we're all better off if we're getting the best versions or the best possible takes on these characters. Some people may disagree that the film we all watched has the best takes on this, but I think it at least has interesting takes on them, which to me is often an important thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd argue that this is the most, in terms of the action at least, this is the most comic book accurate for Wonder Woman. She's actually killing people this time around.
Oh yeah. Her action scene at the start of this, it was kind of neutered in the theatrical cut because leading up to this, I watched the Ultimate Edition of BVS and I watched the theatrical cut of Justice League just to kind of get a frame of reference for the stuff that was going to be different from the Snyder Cut to there, get some of the like tonal consistencies just to refresh my memory on like some of Zack Snyder's style, because let's be honest, Batman v Superman is the most Zack Snyder movie to ever Snyder.
Until this movie, by the way.
Yeah.
Until this movie.
Yeah, no, like Batman v Superman is the most Zack Snyder film for all the wrong reasons. Meanwhile, this one I feel like is the most Zack Snyder film for all the right reasons. Like this is easily it's easily, in my opinion, his strongest film. Like just overall, the characters he gets a chance to like really develop all the characters. He gets a chance to like really like actually try to explain what the story was, you know, which was very much so brushed over in the original Justice League and also the in my opinion, Batman v Superman and Man of Steel. He didn't really spend too much time really fleshing things out the way he does here. But yeah, no, this is for 4 hours. I think it does its justice in terms of just like.
Yes, that was the thing I was most impressed by. For a 4-hour movie, the pacing of this is not bad. I barely felt the time until like I was like sitting on my couch playing with my dog, and like every time I would have to pee, I would pause the movie. And I was like, Oh shit! It's already been like 2 hours.
There were a couple moments, for me at least, when it started to slow down that I could.
Oh, you mean what?
Yeah.
When it literally slows down.
I will say it's certainly shaggy in parts, right? Like, you know, as much as I can look at the film and say, you know, I love this movie, and I agree, it's his best film. And also the most him film he's ever made, and in some ways I think that's what sort of translates to that. But there's also a lot of stuff in here that just doesn't need to be there, but I don't mind that it's there, right? Like, and I assume we're fairly spoiler comfortable here. If you're listening, we're going to be talking about stuff.
Cards on the table. This is going to be a full spoiler discussion for Batman v Superman.
Yeah, I don't know how.
The Justice League. Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah.
Spoilers for the director's cut of a movie that's 3 years old.
But it is this thing of the scene between Diana and Alfred where he's backseat driving her on how to make a cup of tea.
Oh, mansplaining how to make tea.
And I'm like, you know what? That scene in no way needs to be in the film. That could have been left on the cutting room floor, and nothing is lost for the purposes of the movie.
However, my argument...
I love that it's there. I love that this is the shaggy, warts and all version of this that is just like, what if you just got to hang out and luxuriate in that first Avengers movie, right? We all talk about how much we love the interplay of the team and everything there. This is taking a different approach to how to build that. It's saying, what if you did that, and instead of having to get to the big punchy, as kind of as quickly as you can manage it, this takes what Avengers spent a little bit of time doing and spends a ton of time doing, where it's just like, what if we just like hung out with these characters and enjoyed it? And so on a surface level, like, that's part of why it works. And it helps the themes of the film that it's able to take the time with all of the characters, because the characters all become this sort of refractory of what it's trying to talk about. Mirroring across, which of course is a common Snyder trope, but with this kind of running time, he's just got more room to play with that.
The running time is actually used to develop these characters and to develop the themes that he's trying to play with, because you and I talked about this. All the characters in this movie is essentially a study of grief and how people deal with it. It was like Batman, he's bargaining, the Flash is denial, Cyborg is anger, and Lois Lane is in despair, and this is all about their journey to accept it.
I didn't even think about that.
Absolutely.
Because kind of what I got out of my first viewing of it was that this was kind of similar, but like I took away it being like, how do we settle with the past, because we can't change that. We can only affect what's going on presently and in the future,
unless your name is Barry Allen.
yeah But I mean, even his character, he still can't necessarily fix certain things in the past, especially in this movie. And just like to go back to just like the team dynamics, like I loved the scenes where him and Cyborg were kind of just like talking, like you have this jock and this super nerd talking about, so do you think Diana might like younger men? And then Cyborg's just like,
everyone's a younger man.
Listen, man, everybody.
He is 5,000 years old, dude.
She was cradle robbing back in the first movie in Wonder Woman.
Yeah, and like
just like didn't mention that. She's a woman never talks about her age, okay?
And that was like his offhand, just like, you have no shot, bro. Just let it go. But then there's also moments where like you can see like them like still playing around with that idea, because he'll like look at her extra long for like a shot or two.
And speaking of improvements over the theatrical cut, Ezra Miller's Flash.
Yeah.
It's like, I genuinely liked his character. It's like he's it's like he's moving faster than everybody else, but it's not played up so much as, is this character on the spectrum like it was in Joss Whedon, in the Whedon cut of this. It's not awkward in the same way that it was there. It's more grounded, and he's actually getting time to play around, and you see more of his character, especially in the extended scenes of him and Billy Crudup, where Billy Crudup is playing Henry Allen, which those were some of the highlights of the Whedon cut, and thank God they stuck around here.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Nick, that was what was one of the more striking things to me watching it, was how many of the bits of humor that I actually did like from the theatrical version were apparently the Zack Snyder ideas, right? The approach to the Ezra Miller Flash character apparently was coming out of his vision of it, or at the very least, he's comfortable with using that. And you're right, it jives with all the later scenes that come out that are, unquestionably Snyder. And yeah, I think that the film plays with this idea that Barry is, like all of these people, isolated and alone and doesn't quite know how to handle what's going on, right? Like, he now has these powers, but he still can't fix the greatest tragedy of his life, which is that his father is trapped in prison. And he's just kind of like, I don't know what to do with this. And then suddenly Batman shows up on his doorstep and is like, hey, you want to hang out? And Barry Allen is like, yes.
Yeah, he's like jumping on it because he's just so excited that there are people like me in the world. Which is something that a criticism I had of Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. You never looked at these like costume characters, you never looked at them as if they were human beings. Which is the strength of this movie. I mean, they are superpowered. There is plenty of trademarks, Zack Snyder Christ imagery. You are asked to look at them as kind of messianic figures, but they're more humanized here than they are in any of his previous work in the DC universe, I'll say.
Yeah. But I think that all just comes with the time that has been allotted to him. I know a lot of people's criticism is going to be that it is 4 hours, but I think that is like, I mean, aside from obviously slow-mo and a few montages here and there, I think there's not much you really could cut from this film aside from the epilogue. But what is added just gives so much more context to the characters, to the mother boxes, even to the to Steppenwolf even as well. I'd say he's a much better villain here than he ever was in the original.
I mean, if you want the list of characters who are better served by this cut of the film, it's pretty long. Obviously Cyborg's at the top of that list because he goes from being a complete non-factor to being what amounts to the emotional core of the story that they're telling.
Real quick, I gotta just issue an apology to Ray Fisher because I've been bad-mouthing since I saw the theatrical cut of Justice League, and just seeing all of his scenes that were cut from this movie, I'd be fucking pissed off at Warner Brothers too.
Imagine you're Ray Fisher, Ezra Miller, Kieran Hines, like this movie, the one that we all just watched, that's the movie you signed up to make. Imagine you signed up to make that movie and then showed up in a theater at the premiere and saw that theatrical cut. I'd be livid and never want to work with these people ever again too.
I mean, they almost screwed up his entire career. Let's be real. If this cut didn't happen, the stuff about Joss Whedon didn't come out, Ray Fisher might have gotten blackballed. So this joint kind of saved his career to some degree.
We'll see in the
this performance. I was gonna say, seeing this performance is more likely to make other studios say, okay, the talent is there. Right? Because that was always the hardest part of it, is I didn't think that Ray Fisher was untalented. It was just like, this was his big break. And then for reasons that were completely beyond his control, everything around it blew up. And also in terms of how the set works is all accounts, working with Zack Snyder is kind of great. right? Like everybody's super positive. He's great on set. Everybody, like, you never hear people badmouth a Zack Snyder set, and you look at some of his movies and you're like, I don't understand that, because you've got to be broken inside somehow. But apparently, he manages to interact with people just fine. So.
Even in his weakest, even in his most dour movies, by all accounts, Zack Snyder is an absolute Zack Snyder is an absolute joy of a person to work with, by all accounts. And I
say there are obviously things about how he interacts with the press and all of that, and we can talk about that if we want to. But in terms of the people that he works with, he's not James Cameron. Okay, I'd rather be on a set where everyone was just like throwing motivational praises and being like, "Oh man," than like, "No, you're getting back in the water tank now, and I don't want to hear it."
For the 300th take.
Yeah, I'd rather, if I were an actor, I'd rather work on a Zack Snyder set than a David Fincher set.
Oh yeah, for sure. Even if the product ends up bad.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, I get to hang out and go to the gym with Zack Snyder after. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, no, he seems like a cool dude. But yeah, no, Cyborg is so much better in this film. He his whole entire arc with dealing with like what you were talking about with grief was very realistic. I heard one complaint say that he's kind of one note, but his sort of one noteness kind of makes sense in the sense that like his mom just died. He's still trying to figure out how to deal with his newfound abilities and the fact that he's a cyborg and he has this broken relationship with his father, which is being made throughout this film. So he starts to open up.
His relationship with his dad.
That relationship was strained at its best even before the accident. And just the death of his mom and this cybernetic body that his father kind of forced him into, and you kind of see how that relationship went from strained to broken, and you kind of got the hints of them trying to mend that relationship only to have it taken away.
And like when he finally smiles at the end, I was kind of like, yeah. Like, yeah, damn, I felt that. You know, he's kind of gotten this little makeshift family now, and he earned that smile too. You know, that was a long time coming.
Yeah, I mean, let's say the whole movie is building to that moment of him saying, "I'm not broken and I'm not alone." It is him coming to that realization, and the movie is in a lot of ways about that realization. It's about this understanding of coming to this place at the end of this horrible thing that may have happened to you, and whatever that horrible thing is, and how do you find your peace about it, and how do you move forward with that? I think you're right when you talk about that, Chayse. It's just that I think that he's shooting. I don't know that the movie would have been shot through the grief lens as hard as it is if it weren't for what happened. Because there's also a really strong thematic core in this about fathers and sons, and how do we live up to the people who we care about, and family dynamics and those kinds of things. And I think those two become very intertwined in the story, and I think that's because to him as a filmmaker, that's sort of where he's been at and what he's been thinking about. And I think that speaks to him putting so much of his own voice into this. Even if it was something he shot before, there was still that version of that story to be told there, and that doing it in this really shaggy way, he's able to really get at that, right? There is emotional depth and care placed into this movie that I wouldn't say really exists in any of his other ones. Watchmen tries, but it fails because I don't think he gets it yet, right? Like he's close. He understands these ideas, but he doesn't get these ideas. And I think with that life experience, with maybe a little more.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with you, Michael. With Watchmen and to a certain extent with Batman v Superman, he understands how to translate the panel visually, but there's always something missing with the context of it. Like with Watchmen, you took Rorschach, who is a character that Alan Moore intended to be, no, this guy is fucking dangerous. He's insane, and Zack Snyder kind of makes him this all-encompassing badass that I'm the only one that understands what's really going on. and with we've obviously aired our criticism about Batman v Superman, and with just rewatching the Ultimate Edition of that, all the stuff that was taken out, none of it was like emotional beats. It was all just plot development. It was just filling in plot holes. With here, both are added back. It's plot hole and character stuff that are returned to it, and it's making for a much stronger film.
Yeah. I mean, even with as little time as he did have in this film, Superman, he still has that sort of father sort of theme tying him back into kind of paying off even Man of Steel and Batman v Superman to some degree, because of just like him having to rediscover who he was very briefly, and then also him just remembering both of his father's wishes for him, you know?
I am kind of shocked that at no point during that little voiceover, because you get voiceover from Russell Crowe's Jor-El and Kevin Costner as Pa Kent. I'm surprised that Pa Kent at no point during that voiceover didn't repeat the line, "You know what, Clark? Fuck them kids."
See, and that to me, I think, is one of the areas where I'm like, I think this speaks to, Chayse, to your point, that I think this is trying to pay off an emotional arc that, frankly, he has been trying to develop over 3 films, right? That he does. When you look at the outlines that he talked about for like his ultimate endings of like Justice League 2 and Justice League 3 that he talked about at Vanity Fair, you can see this dude had a plan. And if I've read this whole plan, I'm like, yeah, the payoffs are actually pretty good. Like, you get to a good place. The problem is in between, he has 2 of, frankly, some of the worst grimdark ideas anyone could possibly have. And that's sort of the inherent Snyder thing, right? Like, kind of as much as I'm sitting here saying I love the movie, it's like a 4.25 star on a 5-star ranking scale to me. Like, it's not going to be in my, top 10 of the year when we get to the end of the year, but I would certainly say it's a really good, bordering on great movie. And what keeps it from getting there is some of the same things that make me love it. It's the pure Snyder thing that it becomes. And sometimes that's great, and other times I'm like, I'm not entirely sure why we needed to speed ramp that, but you do you, brother.
I mean, that was me. That's how I felt watching that entire epilogue. It was just like, all right, this is his Hail Mary to the sequels.
It's like,
this doesn't need to be here. You could have just let this movie end, and I feel like people would ask for the sequels regardless. Because that last 20 minutes was just like tacked on.
Yeah.
I mean, I like I actually, all right, hold on. Because I do actually sort of like those scenes. Because the Joker Jared Leto's Joker is probably at his best ever in that one scene that they do have in the flash forward.
Well, compared to his one
I will
other
say
appearance.
this, but I will say this. It feels to me like, if this is the final statement from Zack Snyder on all the things that he wanted to do with his Justice League movies, then the last sort of box that he wanted to check, that he kind of had to knock out, was he wanted to do a Batman and Joker scene together. He wanted to do a series of scenes. That's why Joker was going to end up being a really big character in the 3rd one, because he was central to the plot of resetting the timeline, which is what they're hinting at in that flash forward. But I think Snyder, less so thinking that he can make the sequels, because let's be honest, that's never going to happen. Warner Brothers is not going to invest $500 million in making movies for Max.
Yeah, because we talked about this yesterday. Originally, they were never going to do it, but there was enough fever for this online. There was this magical, mystical, almost legendary thing called the Snyder Cut of Justice League that has been rumored to exist for the last 3.5 years. And Warner Brothers decides, you know what, we're launching a new streaming platform. We can get some goodwill back from the fans with our DC universe, because let's be honest, they kind of shit the bed when they initially started out. They're kind of on the right track now, but there's still a lot of bad will.
I was gonna say, and it's an interesting alternate history to me is, do they pull out of the tailspin if they put out, say, not this version of the movie? Because let us all be honest, that version that we watched, that's unreleasable in theaters. It's too damn long.
Yeah.
Like,
oh god,
that needs an like I'll watch it in a theater, but you better give me an intermission like right after the fight in the sewers with the parademons. Like that is I like watching it. I was like, that's a perfect act break intermission point, and it's about 2 hours into the film.
Yeah, that's when I went to the bathroom.
And so yeah, in a theater, I would need an intermission. So that version unreleasable, but I do think there's probably like a 3 hour and 15-minute version of this movie based on that cut that I just saw. That's probably really good.
I mean, they
gets everybody on board when you put it out, because people were negative about Batman v Superman, and deservedly so. Nick, you and I have talked about that. Like, even the theatrical cut is an abomination.
Yeah.
Like the theatrical cut doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't say that in a way of like, oh, movies just have to make sense to be good. It's like, no, you have to like work to be good. That's why Batman v Superman, even in the Ultimate Edition, is still a bad movie. It's not good because it fails at what it's trying to do on an execution level. Even if I understand it conceptually, it doesn't get there at the end.
Yeah.
But this, I think if they put this out in like a 3:15 version in theaters, like, it would have been well received. I mean, we're all seeing it right now, right? We're seeing how this version is being received. I can't imagine the theatrical version that was still close to this, right? That did not suffer from the edict of Warner Brothers saying, you will give us a movie that is under 2 hours with credits. Which is why the theatrical version doesn't make any sense. But it still finds time to give us numerous scenes with the Russian family so that Joss Whedon can get a screenplay credit.
Which, thank God, because that made no sense. You're like in fucking Chernobyl in your third act. Why would anybody be living there?
Yeah.
And it felt like it was just a thing that Whedon was like, we've got to have him doing rescuing people scenes. Like, I got to have the rescuing people scenes. And it's like, no, I just want to see him go to an abandoned fucking Russian city in the shadow of a nuclear plant, and let's wreck some shit without me having to have moral claims about there are people here.
Yeah, this is the one time where Zack Snyder earns the almost apocalyptic level of destruction, because you already built in, there's no people around.
You said the army won't even go there. It's Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Change the name, but it's Chernobyl.
Yeah.
And
which is why it's like, sure, blow up an entire building, surf a parademon down through a factory and onto the street. Like, let's go. I don't even care. I do have to comment on the woman sniffing the sweater, though. Can we talk about that for a minute?
The woman sniffing the sweater?
I mean, it's Jason Momoa's sweater.
Oh yeah, that scene when they were doing that scene was kind of unnecessary though.
That scene is wildly unnecessary. That is some shagginess right there. Let me tell you.
That is shagginess right there. But I want.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was pure Zack Snyder to say, "Hey, look at this sexy ass man."
Yeah.
And my girl was like doing some work at the table behind me while I was watching it, and like that girl picked up that sweater and sniffed it. It was like, she like told me, I'd probably do the same. I was like,
well, I had another friend who she had been asking, she was like, so the big question she had out of the theatrical cut is, she's like, is Aquaman just like taking off clothes on beaches all over the world?
Yes.
How does he have clothes? What's happening
where
with his clothes?
Where does he keep finding new clothes?
We answered that question in the Snyder Cut, and the answer is Icelandic women are keeping his sweaters to sniff them.
To sniff them.
While they sing lamenting Icelandic choruses about the fact that Aquaman has left their village. And in their defense, I don't blame them, because he was clearly far sexier than any man in that village.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts.
That was one of the
That's
scenes.
what I mean when I say, like, there is some stuff in this that even I am just like, whoa, that's a capital C choice you decided to make with that particular moment. All right, cool.
Like
yeah,
the sesame seed falling.
It's like the sesame seed gets a sesame seed gets a music video.
Yeah.
Let's say, does the Barry Iris scene need to be in the movie? No, but I love it.
No, but I love it. It's all, but that scene also serves to introduce this character of Barry Allen, introduce his power set, and kind of establish that, okay, even though this guy, he moves at super speed, you still are operating with real world physics.
Yeah.
He moves so fast he can break glass just by touching it, and he has to be extra gentle when handling another person. Otherwise, just because of how fast he moves, he's gonna fucking rip her apart.
Yeah.
We were talking about that last night. That what the shot that I love in one of the shots that I love in that sequence is when when the shoes explode. He moves and his shoes explode. I'm like, yes. And then when he comes to a stop in the street and skids to a stop, the pavement shoots up around his feet and cracks. Why? Because he's moving that fast. It just doesn't seem. Now, I say the scene doesn't need to be there, but I think the scene actually has a lot to do with another scene that you and I talked about last night, Nick, which is the scene of Cyborg kind of discovering his powers and then doing that altruistic act for the woman at the bank machine. Both of those scenes, I think, are important to establish both A, what are the power sets of these characters? What do these look like? Because we haven't established these characters previously. But also B, who are these characters as people? What are the types of things that they would do? Barry Allen would see a girl get in a car wreck and be like, I need to go save her. But also in the middle of it, be like, ooh, free hot dog.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. And again, I don't blame him. You never know when you'll need a snack.
Exactly.
And for Vic, it is that thing of reinforcing what the flashback scene with his mom in the office with the dean was about, right? That Vic has had the ability to do very special things for a long time, even before he was Cyborg. He always felt that he should use those to help those around him who needed that help. Right? That it's why when Vic turns to Diana and says, fuck the world, I don't believe him. I think he's posturing in a way that Zack Snyder would have believed him in other movies, but I don't think Zack Snyder believes him in this movie, and that's why he has Diana immediately and strongly refute that point of view. Which kind of blows me away, because I was talking with another person earlier today, and he made the point that in Zack Snyder movies, especially kind of the two leading up to it, the world's not worth saving.
Yes.
In this movie, we unequivocally reject that notion.
Hawkhead in Man of Steel literally tells Clark to let a bunch of school children die.
I don't know. Maybe they should have died.
I don't know. Fuck them kids.
Don't save me, son. Let me die.
Yeah.
I'd rather die in a tornado than fucking have a conversation with you.
And back to Barry's scene though, because that scene actually comes up into how Bruce is able to find him. So, which is why we could debate whether or not it should, you could cut it, but I still think that I think it serves more good than it did without it.
I mean, when I say it could be cut, don't take that as me saying I don't love the scene, because I love the scene, and I do think it really adds some depth to who Barry is as a character and gives you kind of the flavor of how has he been dealing with these powers before he ran into people, which is he's just sort of doing little things to help people here and there, right? He's helping people in a car crash, or he's knocking over a guy who's trying to rob a convenience store. Which is the footage from the Batman v Superman movie before Ezra Miller got a haircut. It's long hair, hippie-ish looking fellow. Very handsome though. Jewish boy. But then he's also back, and he's just with the dogs, and he's like, I carry a meat snack in my pocket. You never know when you'll meet one. And I'm just yeah, this is all working for me as a characterization, right? This is a choice, and this is an approach where we're going to say that Barry and Vic are our sort of audience surrogate entry-level characters, right? Aquaman is also being introduced here. There's not a lot of heavy lifting done to try and set up Aquaman stuff, right? There's a little bit with Defoe and a little bit with Hurd, But he doesn't get nearly the same level with people outside of the sphere that like Miller does, where he's talking to Crudup, or where Ray Fisher does, where he's talking with Joe Morton, his dad, and all of that relationship. It feels to me like Snyder likes Aquaman, but Aquaman is sort of the one where I'm like, I don't know how much he really is improved in his handling, even though there's more here. I like what's here.
I think Aquaman it's pretty much the most Zack Snyder character in this, because he is kind of like that ultra aggressive dude bro who will still help people, but it's kind of like fine.
Yeah. I
like coming into the bar and just being like,
tell them to respect the fucking storm.
I do think he's the one guy that
steal this whiskey. It's on him.
Kind of has like, and I mean, somebody had to get the shaft. Let's be real.
I mean, absolutely. You're writing a 6-character story that is an ensemble piece. Somebody's gonna get left holding the bag. Like in the original Avengers movie,
somebody is gonna be hung out to dry.
Yeah, but I still think that I see what you did there. I don't like it, but I see what you did there.
And at the time Justice League was coming out, Aquaman, his movie was already in development, so it was kind of like, okay, kind of let this guy go.
I was gonna say, and Juan was working with Snyder to try and you can see the ways in which those two films are connected in terms of how they talk about like this movie ending with him being like, I need to go reestablish my relationship with my father, which is obviously a really big and key part of the James Wan Aquaman movie, and the development of the relationship between him and Mera, which in the Whedon version, it is made to seem as if they know each other, whereas in this version, it is very clear they have never met before.
I still don't even know why Whedon's choice was made, especially if he did know what the next movie was going to be, but whatever. Aquaman, he did kind of get the shaft, but I still think that the few scenes that they did add of him, kind of like his motivation for joining makes a lot more sense in this film than it did for the prior film. Because he's not necessarily with his people yet. He's just kind of an outcast, but being there when the mother box gets stolen, and him like kind of finally meeting Mera, and then also kind of saying like, all right, like I was here, I did try, it said a lot more than just like him just showing up.
Yeah, it's like he shows up, tries to fight Steppenwolf alone, and realizes that he just got his ass handed to him. Right? It wasn't even close.
Yeah.
So he is not, as he postures to Bruce when Bruce shows up to recruit him, which, by the way, was also a scene that I really loved, and I loved the line of like, dude, so bat. You just dress up like a bat. And I'm like, wow, that was a Snyder line. All right, cool. Way to be self-aware, man. I do think that it makes more sense that he shows up because he realizes that he needs to be part of a team. And I also love the little moment that he gets with Barry right before they go out, where Vic is in the side room doing the software with the plane, which, by the way, I love that little running subplot that got added back in, and it doesn't really make any sense how the plane is suddenly working in the theatrical cut, whatever.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that he checks, like, he starts with Barry, he's like, how's Vic doing? And Barry's like, I think he's okay, he just kind of needs space. He's like, I didn't think you cared.
That's just,
and
it was like,
I never said that.
Yeah.
But you can see in the look that he gives him that he realizes that that's the attitude that he's given off to these people, that he regrets that now, because he does respect and care about every single person in that room at this point. Like that to me is the most interesting part of how the team dynamic building happens here, is that it's not this sort of buddy thing. It is this sort of, at the end of the movie, they feel like a cohesive unit that has sort of figured out their rhythm and how they work together.
Yeah, and everybody contributes to that dynamic, because the theatrical cut, they made Batman, they nerfed the fuck out of Batman. Here, they just decided everyone hated Ben Affleck's Batman, so we're gonna jettison him, and he is clearly the central character of this film.
we start with him for a reason. Like, he is the fulcrum around which all of this kind of operates, because his whole thing is he's just trying to fix the thing that he broke, which is about the most Bruce-ass thing I can ever think of.
Yep, and going back to our discussion about how all of these characters are like stand-ins for the stages of grief, he's bargaining. He's just trying to do everything he can to make it right with what he's done in the past, how he's acted for ostensibly the last 20 years, how his actions essentially led to the death of Superman.
Yeah, it almost
but especially how he behaved in the last chunk of time. I was gonna say, what I appreciate is that he spends this entire movie realizing, he starts it out at the point of, I was a massive dickhead to everyone. I've got to make amends for this. I've got to make this right. And I feel in my gut that this thing is coming, and I know that we have to be ready for it. But I also, at the same time, do appreciate that the movie doesn't have Aquaman just be like, oh yeah, bro, I'll join you. Like, no, that dude doesn't like anybody, as far as I can tell. He doesn't even like his own dad at this point. He's just like, I hate everyone, but like, I will show up and like help you, I guess, because in his heart, Arthur Curry is still a good person. Yeah. That is always the thing to me about all of these Snyder characters, is that if you break it down at their heart, at their core, they are good people, but they engage in poor decision making, or they're not fully sure of that, because we're being shown this version where most of them are fledgling and trying to figure this out, right? Like Diana and Bruce are the exceptions to that rule. Like, they're the only ones who have been doing this for a really long time.
Yeah, Diana especially.
Well, she doesn't look a day over 4,000. So.
And I think
I also love Gal Gadot's performance here. Yeah. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it gets at the core of this, like, Diana, who's a fighter, but who also cares because she's seen so much and is trying to come back to the world.
Yeah.
And she is that bridging gap to the people who are still angry, trying to be like, look, I get it, because I was where you're at now. And I know that if you just, it's a little bit at a time, and it's really hard, but you will get there. And like, she wants to be there to help pull them out of it, because she's already gone through this cycle with the Steve Trevor thing, as we've now determined, twice. So
when she mentioned Steve and that it was only once, I was just like, that's funny. I don't think 1984 was written yet.
I don't think 1984 was in anybody's brains at the time that they were shooting that. Which, well, I'm like one of the lone 1984 defenders. I kind of like it. I enjoy its cheesy Donner spirit. But I acknowledge that, like, no, this is a better movie than that. Like, no, this is a better movie.
Yeah.
No.
I can't agree with DR. I think 84 does to Diana Prince what the theatrical cut of Justice League did to Batman.
Well, all right, let's get back to Justice League. We're not going to talk about that.
This is not a Wonder Woman 84 review. I can take the sidebar if you want.
Okay, so what I do think in Justice League that they hit perfectly, which I think was last hit by the original Wonder Woman, was just the sort of presence of Wonder Woman as a goddess. Whenever she breathes, she has that Amazonian track playing behind her, and she's ready to do something awesome. And every time she does something, I'm like, shit. Was this in the original cut? I don't remember that.
Ancient lamentation music kicks in. Here we go.
Yep, ancient lamentation music. Take a drink.
Yeah. And it happened so much that I started laughing at it, but like, I loved it regardless, because it really established
it was a great audio cue to rely on, and it definitely worked every time it dropped.
I was impressed with the score in this, because you got a Junkie XL returning to do the score, his original music. That score fucking slapped. It was like,
the Junkie XL score is so good, and the needle drops were a little weird.
It worked for me.
It was okay.
Some of the soundtrack choices were a little sus. It was like,
the funniest example to me was that the theatrical cut and the Snyder cut have the exact same scene in it. After Aquaman drops the dude off in the bar, steals the whiskey, and then goes to walk down the pier in slow-mo as the waves wash over him. But in the Whedon cut, he was like, what song would Zack Snyder put over this? And then he picked Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes because apparently, like, he thinks that lowly of Zack Snyder. I don't know. Zack Snyder's actual choice is this, like, lamenting Nick Cave song about being the king who is within and without, and I'm like, that's a much more like thematically rich way to approach this scene. It speaks to how important can music be, because that scene is, with the exception of the music choice, an identical scene. Other than Snyder adds in some additional close-ups on Momoa's face. Why? Because he's trying to sell a completely different emotion to the audience with that. He's trying to sell a dude who just doesn't know where he fits in, doesn't understand life, doesn't really like people, and is sort of trying to like come to terms with who and what he is. Whereas the Whedon version is just like, look at Jason Momoa being badass and strip his tank top off and get in the water.
Yo, it was like, this scene's for the ladies.
I love the scenes where Aquaman whips his hair and the guitar riff kicks in the Aquaman movie, because, like, yeah, that should happen when Jason Momoa whips his hair around. Like, I think somebody, Junkie XL should follow him around with a guitar and just do it.
That doesn't happen in real life?
Yeah.
No, the doof does not follow Jason Momoa around and play guitar for him everywhere.
He should.
But he should, and it's a crime that he's not.
Accurate. But yeah, that to me is one of the more encapsulating things of, like, Dick, I know you and I talked about this a little bit last night, but it's so interesting, and we so rarely get a chance to see a movie where you are presented with two versions of what is essentially the same story, right? They're telling you the same plot. The movies are completely different films because they take a completely different approach to trying to tell that story. The only other example I can think of is Payback, where the Mel Gibson theatrical cut is a completely different film than the Brian Helgeland director's cut that is the mostly available version at this point. The theatrical cut has kind of been lost to time. I have seen both, and yeah, they're just telling very different versions of what amounts to the same plot, right? Like, one is a little darker, and you also have things where, yeah, entire characters are missing from one version to the other because of reshoots, or choices are completely different. Like, for instance, here, Dr. Silas Stone does not die in the theatrical cut. He 100% dies in the Snyder version.
Oh yeah, that was
reason.
Yeah, with a wonderful heroic sacrifice, and then he's the one who gets the big voiceover at the end about who it is we're going to be and how it is we're going to move forward. That really is the ending of the movie, right? Like, the subsequent, I think, 3 scenes that are basically tacked on are what amount to post-credits scenes.
Yeah,
but they just don't run the credits.
Now, what I do think a character that really shouldn't have gotten cut and kind of saves Steppenwolf as a villain is Darkseid. Because it was interesting to see that, like, even though his relationship with Steppenwolf seems to be different in the Snyder universe than it is in the comic books, Steppenwolf's whole role is just like, I just want to go home. I just want redemption.
Yeah, he had. Yeah, Steppenwolf actually. Steppenwolf actually, on some level, he is more of a character in this, and that was kind of my initial criticism with the character. That was my criticism with the original, like, whole pitch of this, of Steppenwolf being developed, because even in comics, Steppenwolf is just second fiddle to Darkseid.
But, like, his relationship with
Darkseid it's lean. That aspect is leaned into, but it works. Steppenwolf is just a character that, please let me go home. I know I fucked up, but come on.
Yeah.
And like, then just
I appreciate that. He's a character who has motivations, and
Yeah, no, that was one of my favorite scenes with Steppenwolf, because it was just like he's in debt. And as a person that's currently in a whole bunch of student loans, I feel that. Because it's just like, wow, like this man just really just wants to go home. Like I understand that as a motivation now, rather than just this guy being like, oh, I'm big bad, give me boxes, I want to rule the world. In the Whedon cut.
In the theatrical cut, he's just smash, destroy, world bad, and I'm like, okay, cool.
And
like
always
he's
call it.
he's like I can roll with that. Like it's fine. This version, it does take the time to give him a motivation. It's like, this is a dude who was kicked off his own planet and is desperately trying to find a way to get home. And finally, here on Earth, he finds it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, has the vision of the anti-life equation and realizes how important this planet would be to Darkseid, and is finally able to convince Darkseid to let him return home. And the look that they put on, admittedly, it's a CG character, right? But they play that scene where he finds out that if he actually pulls this off, he will actually get to go home.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't have to go conquer 50,000 more worlds. He can just go home. And he takes the whole armor off, and he just is so beside himself. He's just like, I don't care. I just want to go back to Apocalypse. Now, why anyone would want to go back to Apocalypse, I don't know. I'm not from there, so,
Yeah, home is
I
home,
assume
man.
it's like when people are like, man, I really want to move.
I
really want to move to an area of Texas that's not Austin. I'm like,
Apocalypse is welcomed a white lady and Granny Goodness, so it's kind of getting gentrified.
No. Granny's been hanging out there for a long time. She's OG to the neighborhood. We're not mad at Granny.
Yeah, but speaking of the CG characters in this, I actually really dug the performances from everybody, including the CG characters that were cut, especially Kieran Hines and Ray Porter, who was doing the mocap and the voice work for Darkseid. And just, there's an inherent problem with Darkseid is you have what is essentially a one-dimensional character. It's like his entire purpose is just, I need to conquer.
Yeah.
Why? Fuck off, it don't matter.
No. Darkseid has a reason why he wants to conquer. I will actually defend Darkseid as having a reason. He's not a complicated character, but he does have a reason. It is because he thinks free will is a bad idea and should be stripped from everyone. It's like the ability of people to make choices makes people disunified and contentious and makes life bad for people. Therefore, everyone should just do what I say and everything would be fine.
And he does hint at that in this film.
And it hints at that. It hints at, like, that's the core of why Darkseid wants the anti-life equation. The anti-life equation will allow him to strip free will of all persons. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm talking this much about New God stuff. I also do appreciate that they call Zeus and everybody the old gods.
Yeah.
I'm like, you were like leaving it out there to like get Orion into some future movies. Like, let's go, Mr. Miracle. I'm down to see some Scout 3.
I was very surprised to see him in this too. Like that, I mean, I'm kind of conflicted on that whole flashback because it's like, on one hand, you get to see how powerful Zeus and Ares were, but on the other hand, they kind of make Darkseid their bitch, and that kind of undervalues how powerful Darkseid is supposed to be.
But I was with it. I was with it. It was. I just really love that flashback scene because it's further establishing continuity, because with the theatrical cut, these are just like CG mob fighting CG mob, and here you actually spend,
because they completely rewrote the scene and put Steppenwolf in that place instead of.
And you're actually like taking the time before like the big battle starts to like see close-ups of characters that we've seen in other movies before. It was like Robin Wright's Antiope and in Connie Nielsen's Hippolyta. They appear briefly in that scene. David Thewlis, he's back as Ares in that scene.
I was gonna say, like, having Ares actually dropping lanterns into the mythology finally. And you know he wanted that cameo at the end to be a lantern.
Oh, he 100% said that. He actually shot it as Sam Benjamin as Hal Jordan in that scene, but because the studio had plans for Green Lantern Corps, he had to scrap it, and that's how we got the Martian Manhunter. Which, while we're singing the praises of this movie with all characters that were added back to it and given a lot more to do, there are characters in this that are kind of just tacked on to just sequel bait for we now pretty much know sequels that aren't going to happen.
I mean, as a comic book reader, I'm very used to that, so I've sort of learned to roll with it. I'm like, yeah, sometimes you introduce things and you're just never going to be able to follow up on that. It does happen when you get taken off a book mid-run.
Yeah.
Which for this, it's kind of a shame because we finally got to see a version of this universe that, by and large, that works.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would argue we've seen versions of this universe that work. I mean, and we've enjoyed those movies. The first Wonder Woman movie,
a live action version of this movie that works. That is cohesive.
Well, Wonder Woman was pretty good.
I was gonna say Wonder Woman is good. The Shazam movie is good. I like the Aquaman movie. Like, I think they've actually made the Birds of Prey movie is still one of my favorites from last year. I
absolutely adore that movie too.
So I think they're making good and interesting choices in what they're doing. This is a very interesting sort of what if to look down. And as a person who really loves kind of the history of movies, it's always fun to have those projects. And now we not only have that like hypothetical, like what would the Zack Snyder version of Justice League look like? We now have that movie. It will exist in perpetuity. If somebody will give me a hard copy of it, I would gladly accept it. But I'm guessing Warner's is not going to be publishing those anytime soon.
It's so bizarre because like I remember a while ago we were I was questioning at least like why did Zack Snyder have the keys to this franchise? And now seeing this film, it was kind of just like it made me like almost want to pull back those words. Like I was just like, wow. Like, now I kind of just want to see what he does if he's given the time to do what he wants to do with it. If he I'd be down for a New Gods movie and that should be like 7 hours long as it makes sense, like this movie. You know,
if he wants to spend 7 hours doing like all of the Kirby stuff, like I'm down. I don't know how big the audience is for that. It might just be me and you, Chase, but like
especially because you, me, Chase, the entire internet, we've been talking shit about this movie nonstop since that first trailer premiered at DC Fandom, and there is nothing I love more just reviewing movies than eating my words. Because I was not looking forward to this movie. I was actually kind of dreading it.
Yeah.
And just to be pleasantly surprised by how good the characterization of these characters are, and how impressed I was with the action in this. Especially with the characters that are getting their just desserts, like the Flash with Cyborg. Fucking Batman gets a scene where he fucks up parademons. It's like, my girlfriend was here, she'll tell me, I was like, yes! Go!
I was gonna say, so while we're on the action topic, I think that's a good segue to talking about the visuals of the film, and particularly the big visual choice of the film, which is of course the fact that it's in the Academy ratio, which doesn't bug me. I'll just go on the record. I was never bothered by that going in. I was like, yeah, that's a choice that a filmmaker can choose to make, and it alters how you can compose your images, but it's still a choice, and it's still a format that is cinematic. I had a lot of like eye rolling at people on Twitter being like, it looks like an Instagram post, and I'm like, oh my Nick, were you one of those people?
No, I was just gonna say that HBO Max missed an opportunity because at the start of it, when you first click play, is like, this film is presented in 4.3 to preserve the director's original vision. I'm so sad that they did not take the opportunity to call it Snyder Vision.
Now, I actually love that aspect ratio for HBO Max because I don't know if you guys have the same problem, but like my mouse will never fade away in HBO Max, and it really so when the movie, like, you know, when the aspect ratio like kind of scrunched down to the middle and I could just move my mouse all the way to the far corner, I was just like, fine, that's perfect. Because now I'm not going to be distracted by it.
I was saying to Nick that last night that one of the things that I loved about doing this is that what you get from making that choice is you lose chunks of the frame on the left and the right? Those are those black bars that we're seeing. You lose kind of that widescreen. But where those go is to go right here. Extend your image on the top and the bottom so you can put more information in and you can compose shots. I mean, I'll crib a line from Matt Zoller's sites. Like, sometimes you're watching like the final end scene, you're watching these beautiful 4:3 kind of compositions. When there's no spoken dialogue and it's just the soundtrack and those images, like, I might as well be watching a superhero version of Intolerance, right? This is the most crazy, like, somebody just took a giant swing on, like, this is my vision of this. And it's like, does that always work? Oh, but like, when people like Martin Scorsese come out and say that their problem with this is that it's just commerce, I'm like, this is in no way commerce.
No.
Yeah. I don't know who would expect this to make money other than it has these characters in it, because this is a deeply personal film that is completely idiosyncratic to the filmmaker who made it. Nobody else is making a Justice League movie that looks, sounds, or acts like this one.
Yeah. We saw Joss Whedon try and fail miserably.
I don't even think he tried. He honestly tried to replicate what he did with Avengers, but in a slightly darker fashion.
Yeah, it's basically just him trying to redo the, like, what if we got together as a team by being all like buddy and jokey, and it's like, that doesn't work for these characters, or at least not for these versions of these characters, right? There's a version of the Justice League that you can put together that makes sense.
Yeah, the Super Friends.
It's not the one that Zack Snyder spent 2 movies talking about leading into this one. Like, now the movie that he gave me, I buy that that's how that team comes together, right? Through mutual respect, through shared experience.
Through shared experience
and
earned mutual respect.
Yeah.
And earned respect.
Yeah.
I appreciate that that Snyder wasn't apparently responsible for the line of Barry Allen being like, I don't know what to do.
No, he knew what to do throughout this entire movie.
Barry understands his powers. He's been helping people. He's not a, like, lost child. He understands things. But again, the Whedon movie seems to be taking a similar approach with the character, but ends up in a completely different place. And that just is, nobody but Zack Snyder could have brought this movie in.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if at the time Zack Snyder could have brought this movie in. That was my comment to another friend last night, was the person Zack Snyder was in 2017. I don't think he makes this movie. I think the person Zack Snyder is today in 2020, 2021, because of what he's lived through, because of how his life has gone, because of how this movie originally went, is a filmmaker who can land this particular plane.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah, I agree completely. I think if this version of the movie comes out in 2017, we get something that's a lot closer in line with Batman v Superman or Man of Steel. You get something that's a lot more grimdark, something that's a lot more hokey, that just doesn't have the heart that this movie does.
I don't know. Maybe it's possible that because this was always supposed to sort of be like a capper one, but the thing is, right, he was going to burn that goodwill immediately if he actually followed through on his Justice League 2 ending of Lois Lane dies, Wonder Woman dies, Aquaman dies, Superman turns evil. I'm just like, oh my god, dude.
And I think the biggest problem with his universe was that it was trying to rush things, and that's like the saving grace of this movie, is that it just slows down and just lets you let the characters drive it. We don't need to rush anything here. we're here to stay. But the rest of the universe is just like the rest of the universe is just like, all right, ram down this plot. I need you to change now.
The time was just like, how the hell are we jumping forward to this thing of we're just gonna go from we had a Superman movie to we had a movie with Superman and Batman to now we're gonna have a movie with the whole Justice League. I'm like, Marvel made like 4 movies, 4 different people.
They made 3 movies before the idea of the Avengers was even gonna be a thing.
The Avengers was always the plan, but
there was a long time spent of them thinking
Avengers at the end of we're gonna make an Iron Man movie and a Hulk movie and a Captain America movie and a Thor movie. We're gonna introduce audiences to all of these characters at various points, and I've always kind of thought that this is the magic of the Avengers franchise is what you get when you then put out an Avengers movie is people who are fans of all of those franchises come see your movie.
Yep. And that's exactly what Stan did originally with the comics. It was just like, all right, I have all these characters I'm introducing. You want to see them come together, guys? You know? And now that they're fully established and have like their own rogues galleries of villains and stuff to fight, now that they have their own personal character developments, now let's see them come together. That's why that formula worked in the MCU. And that's part of the reason why like the Snyder DC universe kind of was struggling was because it didn't give its characters enough time to catch up with the plot. It was kind of just like, all right, I need you to hit this guy right now.
I was gonna say, it's the thing of I watch Batman v Superman and I'm like, how much harder does this movie land? How much more do we actually empathize with Bruce or at least understand his position if we've been presented an entire movie with this Batman, right? Like fighting crime and seeing how the world is slowly sort of beating him down. Actually have been invested in that, and the Ultimate Edition
actually see it puts back some of it, but still not enough to justify all the things that version of Batman does in that particular movie.
No, I agree. It puts back some of it, and most of it is in the Bruce Alfred scenes that get put back into the Ultimate Edition, which are some of the best stuff in the movie. And some of the best stuff in this movie is Alfred and everybody.
Yes. If we can say anything good about Zack Snyder's DCEU, we got Jeremy Irons as Alfred.
I'd say there were like a lot of like casting choices that I wish got explored more, like with J.K. Simmons as Commissioner Gordon. That would have been fun to see.
Little hilarious moment is like, yeah, Commissioner, I got your messages, and then he just.
Wait, what were you saying, Mike?
Oh. Well, I was saying like he's hinting at that, and then he's also hinting at the solo Batman movie with what was supposed to be Batman versus Deathstroke.
Yeah.
Like that sounds awesome. Yeah. Like Deathstroke unleashes Batman's rogues gallery on him by breaking them out of Arkham. Like, like yeah, that movie sounds awesome. Ben Affleck might have killed himself if we made it, but like. Get it. I have also had a drinking problem in the past, so I feel it. Sometimes life is dark and booze seems like the answer.
It is not.
Oh no, it is not. It is not. Apparently, young 20-something women may be the answer. I don't know. It's either that or Dunkin' Donuts, because Ben Affleck seems to be in a much better mood these days.
If it works, it works.
I'd be in a fucking better mood if I was fucking Ana de Armas too.
Yeah. Especially with
it would be. I can see how that would be a serotonin booster.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into our final thoughts on the Justice League. For me, this is by a fucking mile. This is Zack Snyder's absolute best DC movie, and I could see an argument that this is his best movie. Period.
Yeah.
This is a moment where all of like kind of his stylistic flourishes that kind of became a joke in Batman v Superman. This is where he gets the time to develop them, and they truly feel epic. Mm-hmm. All of the story and the character beats hit perfectly, especially with Ezra Miller's Flash and with Ray Fisher Cyborg. And not one character is nerfed, which is the biggest challenge that you can make, that you have when dealing with a superhero ensemble team. The biggest challenge is making everybody feel useful, which is something the theatrical cut failed horrifically. This movie, it's just a good time. And for 4 hours, the pacing actually kind of flies by, which is something I never thought I would say. And I kind of agree with you, Michael. I don't know if this is going to be in my best movies of the year, but depending on how the rest of the year goes, it's probably going to end up somewhere in my honorable mentions. I give this a solid 8 out of 10, which is a rating I never thought I would give for Zack Snyder's Justice League.
Yeah, no, I did not foresee myself giving a positive review to a 4-hour Snyder DC film. But this movie deserves almost every minute of it. And like I heard some people say, oh, maybe he could have split it up in two, but no, this was one concise movie. Believe it or not, this was one fully concise movie that needed its 4 hours, and it's an 8. The characters are phenomenal. They all get their chance to shine. Everybody, I mean, even the villains get their chance to shine a little bit. Even the tackling of grief and just the past and how you deal with that is something that a lot of superhero movies don't really tackle well. And definitely for me, it's an 8. This is by far, in my opinion, Snyder's best film. I love 300, but I could not tell you what any of the characters' motivations were aside from kill and stay alive.
Yeah.
With these guys, I can tell you each and everybody's motivation very clearly. So yeah, he did a great job with this. What do you think, Mike?
I echo a lot of the sentiments that both of you said. To me, it is his best movie. For me, that had previously been Watchmen, which was probably one of the, again, he whiffs on some of the thematic ideas at the core of Watchmen because he's giving his spin on that version of the story. This is better because he is fundamentally telling his own story. He finds a way to not only take these characters, to give you versions of them that make sense. And I know I keep saying that, but I shouldn't keep saying that because it's more than that, right? It is that you understand who they are. The point you just made, Chayse, right? Everybody gets a moment in this. Every single character who has an emotional arc in this movie has that emotional arc paid off in some way, shape, or form. And God knows, how many movies fail at that or couldn't come close to that if they only have a character or two they're giving an emotional arc to. And this movie's trying to give an emotional arc to a dozen people.
Yeah.
It needs to be 3.5 hours long. Its pacing is a little slow in parts, but that's part of it. Just wants you to luxuriate in what this is. And you kind of just have to accept that going in. It's not going to be for everybody. It is very hard on the Zack Snyder loves to deconstruct this and try and figure out how it works, and he wants to present that because that's what he's interested in. But this is the best version of that.
Yeah.
This is him finally being able to articulate what it was very clear that he was trying to articulate in Man of Steel and almost got there, and then tried again to articulate in Batman v Superman and came way short. This is finally the time where I'm this is legitimately a really good movie. It is, to both of your points, an 8 out of 10. For me, I gave it 4 stars, I think, on Letterboxd. If Letterboxd would let me do quarters, I'd give it the 4.25. It earned that extra quarter star, which is what puts it an extra level above, right? It's because it is all those little moments. As much as I can look at I can't go higher than that because it does have some of those just pure Snyderisms that you sort of sink it sometimes in a given moment. But as a whole, no, it works. It works in a it makes sense kind of way, but it works in a this is an emotionally satisfying film.
Yeah.
When you get to the end of it, you're going to feel like, okay, got it. And I actually I feel what you were trying to get me to feel here.
Mm-hmm.
At least that was my response to it at the end. I get it if that's not your response in the end. If you just really don't like these takes on these characters, this movie is probably not going to change your mind on those takes.
Yeah, if you just don't like Zack Snyder's style as a filmmaker, if you're just not cool with a movie being 4 hours long, this movie isn't going to change your mind on it.
No, I was going to say it's so. I get it if you don't like these takes on these characters, this isn't going to change your mind. But what this does do is it finally gives you a clear and complete vision of what actually are these versions of these characters. Because I don't know, I don't think Superman was ever supposed to be finished as a character until he gets to here. I think his arc has been played out over 3 movies. And I think Batman's arc was being played out over 2 movies. And and to be honest, even more, right? It looked like Snyder wanted to play that out over about 4 movies. I think that can sometimes be the hard part is in these sort of long plan ideas, if the movies fall apart, we're left with these films that feel incomplete to us because they are. They're not full of the actual emotional payoffs that were supposed to land at the end. This finally gives us those payoffs. And so if you're willing to take that 4-hour ride, I would say it's worth it. But I also 100% understand the people who either are not going to like it because of whatever reason they come into the film of some aspect of it that just isn't working for them, or just the people who want to avoid it altogether because it's Zack Snyder's Justice League and we all know everything that entails.
I mean, I'd even say, because I personally didn't like his takes on Batman or Superman, really. I mean, I sort of liked Batman's action scenes. I think he did that right. But Batman as a character, I hated how he did that.
I like the action scenes of Zack Snyder's Batman, and I liked Ben Affleck's portrayal of it. But there's just something fundamentally missing when you have a character whose entire ideology is "I do not kill," and you turn him into a serial killer.
But in this, I felt mentally it changed my opinion on what he could do with Batman, and it definitely changed my opinion on what he could do with Superman.
I'd definitely be interested in revisiting his previous films with this movie in mind.
I'm not going to. You can do that by yourself. But what I'm saying is, if you were giving it a second chance,
Nick, I think you and I talked about that. Doing a podcast about that last night, so
because in preparation for this, I watched all of Zack Snyder's previous DC films, and that it was a rough week until this came on HBO Max. It was a rough fucking week.
Nah, so like I back to what Michael was saying. I think what he was trying to do with those 2 characters in particular, he finally kind of got it right. That Superman is this godlike being, but with actual human emotions that actually cares about people and actually has an anchor, which is Lois Lane. He finally got that somewhat right. With Batman, he finally gave him something. I mean, yes, he got rid of his initial ideology, but he gave him something to work with as a character with the whole grief thing. So yeah, no, I definitely recommend you guys, like, if you hated Batman v Superman, give this a chance. Because it changed my mind completely.
Yeah, I definitely say give this a chance. If you don't have 4 hours, just
bad movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely watch this in chunks.
Yeah. But
absolutely, and ultimately, HBO Max will actually make it easy for you to do that because it's got chapter breaks in it. Like Zack Snyder was looking out for you. Okay? He knew he made a long movie.
Yep, it had. Yep, Zack Snyder. You're the real MVP right now.
Yeah, there's like 10 different chapters. You'll be fine.
They're all in the scroll bar at the bottom of HBO Max. So even the Max UI people were looking out for you.
Yeah. But
all right. I still am upset that long. Something that is definitely shorter.
Yeah.
Definitely at least one third shorter.
Yeah. I mean, shit, maybe like the full
like
entire
75% shorter
And then the Snyder Cut. It's only gonna be like 5 episodes, right?
Okay, so while DC came out swinging with Batman v Zack Snyder's Justice League, you got the reigning champ, Marvel Studios, and their brand new series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which sees the return of Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson, and Sebastian Stan as Bucky Barnes, and catching up with them after the events of Avengers Endgame. You see Sam, he's kind of gone back to the Air Force. He's working with Special Operations in what I'd say is probably one of the best action scenes I've seen in the MCU to come to one of the best recent action scenes, because you get to see Sam working with his tools, working with his wings, and getting to show off, yeah, there's a reason this motherfucker was an Avenger and was a Special Operations pilot before that.
Yeah. No, this was definitely his best action since Solo.
And it's also cool to see because last week you and me and our friend Nathan, we did a retro review for Captain America Winter Soldier, and it's cool to see characters returning from that because we get to see George St. Pierre return as George Batroc.
Yeah. And speaking of that movie,
and this time he's actually leaping, so I appreciated that.
He's a leaper. Batroc's the leaper.
But speaking of that movie, though, it's interesting because you see that development. Like, there's a sharp contrast between the Sam Wilson fighting in that movie and the Sam Wilson fighting in this movie. Because that motherfucker learned some martial arts. He definitely knows how to use them wings better than ever, and he's actually looking like a superhero.
Yeah, this is a guy who's more practiced using the wings. Because at the beginning of Winter Soldier, he's a guy who's got out of the military. He's like working on readjusting to civilian life, but he comes out of retirement because Captain America needs my help.
And he was getting his ass beat by Frank Grillo too.
Which I'm pretty sure most people would get their ass beat by Frank Grillo.
Nah, but what I'm saying is, like, I don't think that this Falcon here is getting his ass beat by Frank Grillo anymore.
He got that one ass beat. He went to the dojo. He cut the wings up.
Yeah.
I think it's very important for them to establish in that scene, like, how much Sam's sort of powers have leveled up, because to sort of, I think, give where at least I think my thoughts of what I think the arc of this season is going to be for Sam is going to be Sam coming to the self-realization / admitting to himself he needs to be the new Captain America. Right? We're going to end up in a position where Sam takes up the shield. But if we're going to do that, we have to establish that Sam's on a level that he can get into a fight with somebody that Captain America got into a fight with and beat that person up.
Yeah.
Previously, that was not the case, to your point, Chayse, right? Like, Crossbones kicked his ass in Winter Soldier, and that was fine. Like, Crossbones should kick his ass in that movie.
Yeah.
But if he's going to be Captain America, Crossbones and the Batroc, the Leapers of the world, cannot be kicking his ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's what they're trying to set that up, and I think it was important with that action scene to get the audience to buy in that, like, yeah, this dude is on a definite strong Avengers level power set at this point. He's not just
this is the guy.
He's not the dude who got beat up by Ant-Man, okay?
It's kind of establishing that.
About it. Sorry.
Yeah, this is
he got beat up by all the bugs actually in that movie. He got beat up by Spider-Man, Ant-Man.
Yeah, this series, I feel like the arc. I agree with you, Michael. This is the arc of Sam realizing that, nah, Steve left me the shield for a reason, and because I'm the guy who needs to be Captain America, and you kind of get his hesitation to do it in the opening scene where you see him giving up the shield to the Smithsonian, which is actually, I'd say, a fairly realistic scene, and it's handled with as much reverence as it deserves. Especially cool to see Don Cheadle make a small appearance as Rhodey in the beginning of this, and you kind of get to see more of their back and forth, which kind of didn't get to see in the Avengers movies because, like Michael, you were saying earlier, those are big ensemble movies, so some characters, by the nature of that, just get the shaft and don't get as much time to develop.
Yeah.
And then you're also left with a position where, like, Sam has only been in one Avengers movie. There's only one other chance he might have interacted with Rhodey, and it, you know, or Civil War, I guess technically. But again, in both those cases, like in Civil War, they're on different sides, and in Infinity War, they're together. But there's a lot of people around at that point, right? Whereas, and that's the advantage of these TV shows. I was talking with another friend about that last night, where we were talking about WandaVision and how much. So I went back and rewatched Infinity War after I had finished WandaVision, and she was saying that she had gone back and rewatched Infinity War when she was about halfway through WandaVision. In both cases, we both came away from that movie saying the emotional arc of Scarlet Witch and Vision in that movie is so much stronger for having watched WandaVision and now having that tapestry of understanding that relationship and how it developed over time. It's stronger, and you can take the time to do that kind of deep characterization when you have more time to play with and a more narrow focus, right? I can roll my eyes at Falcon and Winter Soldier and go, yeah, this is going to be like a 6-hour movie or whatever their runtime total of all these episodes ends up being. But 6-hour movie is what TV, if you're doing a limited series, can really give you, which is that you can take that additional time in telling the same kind of story you do. You can do it over a longer period of time, and what you add in, we just talked about with all this, you know, Zack Snyder's Justice League, is the characterization moments, the thematic moments, the stuff that actually gives you undergirding, that makes you care when it's time for everybody to go punchy.
Yeah. Now we learn sort of more about his family, and that Tony Stark kind of had the Avengers in a 360 deal or something, because none of them got money except for him.
I love all the scenes where we're not going punchy in this, because this episode, it is mostly setup, but it doesn't feel like setup. It's just establishing these characters as people living in this world, especially once you factor in the blip, which again, just those were some of the highlights of WandaVision for me, and seeing the real world consequences, and those are explored even more in depth here, which of course the blip would fuck up the economy. You can't get out alone if you have no employment history in the last 5 years, because things are gonna tighten up once people start coming back and asking for shit.
Yeah, that whole scene with when he's asking for that loan,
that shit felt too real.
That hit like a ton of bullets, and it was supposed to. That felt too real.
Oh my god. Because I wasn't so sold on his sister character yet until that scene. And once we got to that scene and you see the dynamic play out with the banker just kind of being like this quote unquote super fan that is obviously kind of just like, no, I'm not giving this loan to two black people that just came back from a blip. Are you crazy?
Yeah, and my favorite moment in that scene is like, can I take a selfie with you? You got your arms up?
Yeah.
Like,
can you do the wings for me?
You serious? and speaking of this episode is pushing the fucking PG-13.
Oh yeah.
Because it definitely is, because shit is dropped a lot. The violence, it's still very PG-13, but it's gnarlier than anything else available in Disney Plus.
Yeah.
This is definitely pushing up on that TV 14 rating. But to your point earlier, Nick, talking about the you had Nathan on last week to talk about Winter Soldier, like it's of a piece with that, right? In some ways, this feels more like the Winter Soldier sequel we never really got, because Civil War just is half that movie and half like we need to get the plates spinning for the next Avengers movie, so we got to get some of this stuff dealt with, because Age of Ultron was such a nightmare, and now we're sort of adjusting plans on the fly.
Yeah, and speaking of the Winter Soldier,
it bummed me out because I loved that movie and I really wanted, and I loved the first Captain America movie, and I was like, I really want like a big fitting trilogy ender for Captain America. And what I kind of got that, but I mostly got a movie that was about why Tony Stark is sad that his dad died. Which, don't get me wrong, I appreciate that we built that arc and it paid off in Endgame with the scene with John Slattery and all that, and that he got that moment is, you know, great for the character and it's a good payoff for the audience. But yeah, no, like I am appreciative.
It's weird in retrospect to think that the Russo. It's weird in retrospect to think that the weakest movie in the Russo brothers' career in the MCU was Civil War.
I still think you guys are wrong, but I'm willing to let it go.
And I should be very clear when I'm saying all of this. Do not read this as me saying I didn't like Civil War. I like Civil War, actually. I was bummed out in the moment that it was less of a Captain America sequel and more of a Avengers 2.5 bonus issue.
This feels much more like a follow-up to the characters that were introduced in the Captain America series proper than Civil War did, because Civil War didn't really, I mean, it did a decent job for Cap, but he wasn't necessarily the focus. He wasn't the protagonist neither. I mean, you could even argue that Bucky was kind of a plot device to some degree in Civil War, but we don't have to talk about that because in here,
this is arguably the first time ever in the history of the MCU that Sebastian Stan is actually going to get a chance to play a character.
Yes, and if this first episode
other
is
than
any
maybe
indication,
the first Captain America movie where he was actually a character.
Yeah,
amazing. He gets to be a character when you like cut off all his long hair.
Yeah, it's only then when he's allowed to actually emote and have.
Yeah, and speaking of something that we were very critical in our reviews last week when talking about Sherry and its depictions of PTSD, that is something that I feel is really ground to take here with Marvel, and kind of with this whole storytelling format. You can talk about these real world issues like grief, like post-traumatic stress. You can do it in a very human way, especially when you have the caliber of actors that you have available with the MCU. Because Sebastian Stan, it was heartbreaking watching him in this episode, because you see kind of him reintegrating into society. You get like little hints of him on his little payback journey from his time as the Winter Soldier. And you can see just how much his time as that is tearing him apart, which is something that we didn't get much development of in his previous appearances.
And not just that, he was a part of the blip, he was gone for 5 years. So he's also has that 5-year setback along with the 100 or almost 100 years that he was Winter Soldier, So he's like extra behind.
Yeah, and
hey, as he says in this episode, right, he has spent roughly 90 years of his life at this point, 90 years of his life at this point, going from one fight to another. Right? Once he's 18, 20, he's in the army and he's in World War II and he's fighting with Cap. And then he's the Winter Soldier for 70 years. And now he's like, other than that brief moment where Cap left him in Wakanda to hang out with kids and do farming, like, that's it. Like, this dude has just been in a war pretty much his entire adult life that he can remember.
Yeah. And this is the first time he gets a chance to like settle down, finally get some therapy.
And not just in war, being used as a yeah, she is fantastic in this, and I love their dynamic. Especially, I just love the way the scene is shot, because it's very close up on their face. In Sebastian Stan is.
I was gonna say those tight close-ups help to sell that like back and forth, and I appreciated when she's like, "What do you want?" and he's just like, "I want peace," and her response is just bullshit. I've killed plenty of people. I'm like, oh my, I want to know that backstory.
Yeah. And just such the strength of the MCU is that other than I'd say a few exceptions, a lot of the side characters are fucking great. Like, I love Bucky's therapist in this. I really like you get little brief scenes of Sam in the field as the Falcon, and he has like his intel guy. He's kind of awesome. I loved their back and forth in this.
So this will be a possible spoiler. This is me bringing my comic book nerddom into this. That character is actually the person who, when Sam picks up the shield and becomes Captain America, that character becomes the new Falcon.
Ooh.
Okay, that makes sense.
Interesting.
So Joaquin will be our Latino Falcon hanging out with a black Captain America.
That makes a lot of sense, because I can see them doing that in this season. When he finally does take the shield, he'll give him the wings. I like that.
Yeah, and I love that with the side character, with that character, it's shown that even though he is kind of second fiddle to the Falcon, he's still very competent in his own right. He's a very capable intel guy. He knows how to fight, and if the guy he's fighting didn't have those insane powers, it probably would have been a lot closer than that, because he does get washed, but there's a good reason for it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, and I appreciated that it didn't take them more than 2 or 3 scenes, right? They do a lot of shoe leather really fast to get you to buy in. Like, Sam knows this dude. Sam seems to like this dude. Sam seems to trust this dude. And if Sam seems to feel all of those things about this dude, he has an audience, because we know, like, and trust Sam, because Steve told us to know, like, trust Sam. We're gonna extend that to this character, even though he's brand new and has only been here for 2 scenes at this point. Like, to the point where when he gets his ass kicked later, I was like, oh man, I hope he's okay.
I remember, like, they stomped on his face. I was like, oh shit, did they kill him? I was like, and then that little FaceTime call was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, he's cool. All right.
Yeah, no, I was like, oh my God, did they just kill that dude off? And I was like, oh, thank God, he called Sam. Okay, he's alive. He's alive.
Ironically, the only character that I think is for sure gonna die doesn't come in until the very end of this episode. If we're like, because we're kind of gushing about this series, at least this first episode, you guys want to break down to theories? Because I think that, because the very end of this episode, it's like announcing that, yeah, the U.S. fucked you over, and they gave the shield to John Walker, aka U.S. agent, who is going to be marketed as the new Captain America, which I was kind of like saying during our anticipation for the show, is like, yeah, America's probably, the U.S. government's probably not too happy about a black Captain America.
Yeah, they're not ready for it.
Let's get this.
Spoiler alert, they weren't super stoked about that when Steve became an old man and gave Sam the shield.
Like, nope, give me a good old, great, beautiful white man, be Captain America.
Straight from Oklahoma.
See, here's my theory. We digitally de-aged Kurt Russell. We didn't tell anyone, and it's actually ego. You can't convince me that Wyatt Russell is a real person. He's just digitally de-aged.
It's the clone theories. Like, you know how they have the 5 different Leo clones getting ready after Leo retires? Like, it's the Leo clone theory.
No, we've already got like 5 Margot Robbie clones. So eventually in the future, everyone's gonna get their Margot Robbie.
Yeah, that jawline.
I just saw that jawline in that cowl, and I was like, "Is Kurt Russell Captain America?"
Which I kind of want to see that movie, like time travel. Let's get.
I mean, like give me the Kurt Russell as Captain America in like 1995 movie. Like, sign me up for that.
Yeah, but I honestly think that I hope this isn't the case, but I think U.S. Agent is gonna be kind of a plot device to show that. Yeah, the government, they chose this guy. He's kind of in over his head, and they're probably going to kill him his first time out as Cap when like he actually deals with a real threat. And that's just furthering that Sam is the rightful successor to Steve Rogers.
I 100% think he's getting nuked by Zemo at some point. If he doesn't get killed, he's definitely getting like incapacitated in some way.
Yeah.
He'll probably do fine in his
even
first couple of
introduced
missions,
Zemo.
but as soon as he has to go up against those LDF people who, spoiler alert, I'm sure are going to be breaking Zemo out at some point.
It's going to be revealed that Zemo is really the guy behind them, or they are working together, because we don't know if Zemo blipped.
All we know is Zemo's back no matter what. We don't know if he blipped away for 5 years, and the reason we definitely know he's around is because he's on Bucky's list. Probably the number one person on that list of people that Bucky feels he needs to make amends with.
Oh yeah.
Which, that is my favorite thing. Again, you see Bucky adapting to the modern world. He's fucking with people. And it's always cool to see the Winter Soldier. No matter the context. Because I was kind of shocked that we flashback where he does assassinate one guy and then he kills this one student. And then you see the reveal that he's hanging out with this older gentleman in Brooklyn, and when that reveal happened, I called it, but oh no,
yeah, that was his son.
And that's the thing of, to your point earlier, Nick, right? Like the PTSD and the way that this show presents how Bucky is dealing with his PTSD is. I think that the show has, really kind of two major like issue theme things it wants to tackle. One is the PTSD and the other is race. And it's going to use Bucky to tackle all the PTSD stuff, and it's going to use Sam to tackle the race stuff. And to be honest, like those are both topics that like Winter Soldier hints at it a little bit, right? Like Steve and Cap have a brief conversation about like, can't sleep in your bed, it's too soft, feels like a marshmallow, I'm just going to like sink to the floor. All of that, and I'm like, that is one of the truer and probably like better characterization moments where I'm like, yeah, these dudes would bond over that because they would understand that, and that is kind of a truth of this lifestyle that they both have chosen to lead. It also is why it makes a lot of sense for Rhodey to be being the one who talks to Sam now, especially when you consider they're both Air Force. Like Rhodey's always been Air Force. I'm excited to see the show actually delving into what does it mean to be Bucky and to wake up and know that you were a living weapon for 70 years. You are in your heart a good person who cares about people.
But you've also done horrific things out of your control, and how do you forgive yourself for that?
You were a monster, but it wasn't your fault. And how do you forgive yourself the monstrous things you did that you would have never chosen to do? And in his case, it's not just like, oh, I was following orders. It's like, no, you were literally brainwashed. You person, James Buchanan Barnes, did not exist.
Your memories were not your own.
Like the things that were happening were not you. And again, as someone who has struggled with a drinking problem and with alcoholism and some of those notions of how do you forgive yourself for the terrible things you did when you weren't you? And that, I mean, like, obviously I didn't murder anybody that I recall, allegedly. No, I definitely didn't, but I definitely treated people horribly, right? I was monstrous because of the person that had made me into. And having to make those amends, to have to do that on the other side of it, that was some of the hardest stuff I've ever done in my life. But it was also some of the most important and really the stuff that allowed me to move on. So I'm excited to see a character that I really like in Bucky go through that kind of journey for his own life. And I think that that's the journey, or at least that I hope they're going to take him on throughout this series, because I think that if you take that journey, that puts everybody in the position where they're probably ready for the next Avengers movie whenever that happens, or whenever we want to make another series like this. And even if we don't, then we have sort of tied these off in a bow and explained who these characters are and how they've come to their peace in the new world. Now, I don't think Sam's going anywhere, And Stan's probably not either because he's got a lot of films still left on the contract they made him sign when he.
Oh, yeah.
So unless they're prequels, I think he's pretty safe.
Yeah. Shit.
They could Black Widow us, but you know.
Every time I think about like that scene getting to the Greek, is like, Sergio gonna be fine. Oh fuck. Yeah, Sebastian Stan gonna be fine.
He gonna be fine. He gonna make it through this season for sure. For sure.
Even if Anthony Mackie doesn't make it out of this, I'm pretty sure there's at least 4 Netflix movies waiting for his signature on a contract somewhere.
Facts.
Bet.
All those movies felt like they were like leading up to this, though. Every last one of them was just like action training for him to get ready for the Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, and
I watch him and I'm always like, oh man, you're like 80% of Denzel. Like, I want you to imagine the Kurt Russell and Denzel team up in 1995, where Kurt Russell is Captain America and Denzel is Falcon. You're welcome, America.
Now that's the movie we need. Make it happen, Kevin.
Yeah, let's go. Yeah, come on, Kevin. Do you hate money?
Yeah, we know you're working on the multiverse of madness. That needs to be one of the multiverses.
There's a multiverse where we made these movies in the 90s and we used all of those actors.
Tom Cruise, Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt was definitely Tony Stark.
It was either going to be Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah, Tom Cruise definitely would have been Tony Stark.
Yeah, I could see that. I don't even think I'd be mad at that either. I mean, aside from Robert Downey, he's the only one I could really think that would be like.
Anyway, going back to Falcon and Winter Soldier. Again, the filmmaking in this is spectacular because we mentioned last week that the editor for Better Call Saul, she left season 5 of that show to come work on this, and my God, it's chef's kiss. It's a beautifully crafted episode.
I was going to say, to your point about the action sequence at the beginning of the show, of the beginning of the episode, most of that's down to the editing, right? The editing is perfectly clear so that you understand sort of the geography, what's going on, who's where, how is this operating.
And going back to our point last week, you feel the weight of each punch, every kick. You feel the physics of the room. You feel each inch of that space.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it's so important, I think, and this is what I was reading Alan Sepinwall's review earlier today of this episode, and he was a little more down on it than we are. And the reason that he was down on it was, to him, it reminded him of some of those Netflix Marvel shows, right? Like, yeah, the action was really fun at the beginning, but most of it was just kind of this like slow shoe leather, like we're just kind of like dragging our feet, just hanging out. And I'm like, I understand that complaint. The reason I don't think it's going to be similar here is we're laying introductory shoe leather in order to move this forward as much as we can. I know that he, as a critic, tends to be fairly harsh on the sort of like X hour movie concept of making a TV show, right? And I think that's a fair complaint to have when most Netflix shows are 13 episodes.
Yeah.
And I love Satan Tango as much as the next lunatic, but I don't want to watch that once a week, okay? Like, I shouldn't have to watch 10 hours of your show to understand where we're going with this, unless you're writing The Wire and you're just trying to write a novel and put it on television.
Yeah, unless you're writing unless you're bringing Game of Thrones to TV, then you kind of don't need 10 episodes. The first 4 seasons.
Let's say 13 and 10 isn't even like 13 is like, that's the standard Netflix thing. And so this might look like it has that pacing, but guess what? It's going to pick up. Business is going to pick up a lot faster because there's only 5 more episodes after this.
We moving this shit along.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, like,
introduced the new Captain America, the key sort of major antagonist with the Flag Smashers and LDF floating out there as a terrorist group.
We've set up both of our protagonists' arc throughout this series, and we further established the state of the world after the blip.
Yeah. No, every seed was already planted in this episode for them to speed it up for the next 5 episodes. And I feel like it needed to take this sort of slow burn approach because it has so much to set up.
Yeah, this series, even if it's only 6 episodes, there's still gonna be, this series is gonna be dense as fuck.
Yeah.
And you kind of needed this slow burn first episode just to establish all of the characters, all of the major players in this.
I was going to say, to me, it's this thing of you're setting all these pieces up because you need to be able to make them matter later. And it's also valuable to your point, Nick, take this time to sort of just sink in and sort of soak into what does a post-Endgame, post-blip world look like and function like. WandaVision gave us some idea, but WandaVision was ultimately interested in really sort of doing its own thing. And need we forget, of course, this was originally supposed to be the first show that aired, and the only reason that it was delayed was because production got pushed back due to COVID. With WandaVision, they were able to finish that in a studio lot. With this show, you kind of had to film on location, and that, especially with COVID, that's a whole bunch of other headaches itself. So WandaVision, I don't think was ever intended to be the one that gave us the real idea of what does this world look like and how is it broken. I think this was always supposed to be the show that did that. And I think it's by spending this episode with these characters in this world, it helps that to make more sense. Right? Like, Bucky feels like he's Steve in the first Avengers movie. He's just figuring this out. He doesn't fully get it. Sam is trying to figure out where he fits in the world at this point, other than just fighting bad guys, because that's the only thing he knows how to do, is to go do the punchy. But when he tries to put himself in real life and go to the bank and get a loan, well, guess what? I'm pretty sure you're still black.
And you have a 5-year history of just straight missing.
You were employed for 5 years, and it's like, no, because apparently Tony Stark couldn't be bothered to make sure that we were all still getting our $1,000 weekly stipend.
That's so funny to me that low-key the entire Avengers squad were broke. It was just Tony Stark was just making sure that they got to places on time.
Tony was writing the checks.
I paid for your housing. It's taken care of. It's all here. Like, I'll make sure there's food. Like, it'll get delivered every week. Don't worry about it. Now Tony's dead, and they're all like, "Oh man,
shit! The fucking bank took the Avengers compound.
So the bank didn't get like a workers' comp or nothing. Like,
I'll be like, first you won't let us come back when we went away in the first place, because God forbid we make your daughter go away, and now you weren't even paying us. Man, Tony Stark's starting to sound like a real asshole.
That's the fuck.
Well, I'm not going to go on the Tony Stark is the secret villain.
Tony Stark is still creating villains.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, he is the ultimate self-sabotager. And
I mean, that's
he created from the jump. That's always been Tony Stark.
He was the start of the universe, and he is still the cause of all of its misfortune.
And he is still well working on ending this universe well from beyond the grave.
Yeah. But nah, this is a good first episode. I don't know if we want to give it a number score, because it's not. I feel uncomfortable doing that because it's incomplete right now.
Especially just the context of this episode. It's mostly set up. We're setting up our players. We're setting up the stakes and establishing the world, and it's more setting up where is this going to go.
Now, if it flops, then it flops, but I'm sure they'll bring it home.
I mean, Marvel's made like 20 movies and a series that, by and large, they hit more than they miss.
Yeah.
Even their misses are still decent movies.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, they're giving a grade out to this is like trying to give a number grade to the first act of a film.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is just laying out, like, where am I? What do these people's lives look like? And what's the state of everything around them? And then also, okay, what's going to be the conflict that's going to enter into their world? Well, now we have two conflicts that have entered into their world, right? Like, there's a new dude proclaiming to be Captain America, which I can guarantee is not only going to make Sam mad, I think Bucky might actually just go punch him in the face.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the next episode is just going to be Bucky punching him in the dick with the vibranium arm.
Yeah,
Bucky showing up with the vibranium arm, being like,
he's got to do
no.
He's gonna get.
It's like Kibe Matumbo. No.
Yeah, he's got to do a cap check. If you can't take this, you're not Cap.
If you can't kick my ass, you're not Cap.
Yeah. But no, good first episode. I think it's a good point to sort of wrap this show up.
Yep. Thanks everybody for joining us. We covered Zack Snyder's Justice League, gave that our review, gave a very in-depth discussion, and broke down the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. A great fucking week to be a comic book fan.
Yes.
absolutely.
One of the best weeks we've had in a long time. You can find the show at you can find more of the show at Instagram, Twitter, Twitch sooner or later. Where else are we on? We're on like TikTok now too. The Afternoon Tune. All one word, The Afternoon Tune. Where can they find you, Mike?
Y'all can find me on Twitter at MFHourigan. That's HOURIGAN. That's about it. I'm also on Insta at the same, but I don't post a lot in either place. Offshoot of having a job in higher education, it's better to keep a low profile.
Yeah, facts.
Yeah, fair enough.
And if you're looking for me individually, you can find me at Mr. Chayse Mac, MrChaysemac, on Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. Where can they find you, Nick?
All right, you can find me Twitter. You can find me Twitter, Instagram at Night and Day Nick. That's NIGHT, the letter N, DAY Nick, and you can find Bubbles here on Instagram at bud.bles0922.
All right. So thanks for checking us out. Don't forget to always stay tuned.
Jesus pose.
We're never going to get that right, ever.
No. And because we're doing a Zack Snyder, Jesus. Everybody's Jesus, just like everybody is Mephisto.
Mephisto will never die. All hail Mephisto.
Do you have a moment to talk about our Lord and Savior?